60 cities in 63 days, 72 cities in 80 days, 85 cities in 90 days. The Coliseum in Richfield, Ohio, largest audience in one day, 18,695. Stealth limousines and subterranean entrances. I played Nassau Coliseum in New York. How many tickets sold? 45,000.
Hello, today we're going to talk about why Steve Martin quit stand-up comedy, and we're going to cry. We're not going to cry. He's got a lot of really good reasons. I miss him terribly as a stand-up comedian, but let's dig into why he decided to walk away. Also, if you want to hear more about his style and who he was as a comedian and how he got to this pinnacle that he quit from, go watch my previous video. That's gonna fill in the first part of the story, but if you know all that and you just want to hear about why he quit, then this is great too. To remind y'all, he's all over SNL, he's selling out arenas, multi-platinum, huge, amazing, everywhere, and then gone.
If I'm in a restaurant and I'm eating and someone says, "Hey, mind if I smoke?" I always say, "Oh no, do you mind if I fart?"
So let's talk about when a comedian is selling out arenas.
Nothing ruins comedy like arenas. That is a well-established fact.
It usually means they're at the top of the roller coaster, right? It's a huge sign of success, but it can also mean the beginning of the end. And they're probably cheering more than they're laughing, which can be a red flag.
Oh no, I'm getting happy feet! Whoa!
In 1981, my act was like an overly plumed bird whose next evolutionary step was extinction.
Like, okay, imagine you're a comedian and you're performing in an arena. 20,000 people there, and you're this little white dot. Do you think they want to hear you try out new material? They want to hear King Tut, right? They want to know the things that they know, and they want to sing along with you, and they're there to party and to have a good time. And that's what this space invites. But how on earth are you going to develop new material when you're playing arenas? How on earth would anyone do that? Next, this was never really his scene. Remember, he's a philosophy nerd. He's an art nerd. He had fun breaking apart this art form and he was fascinated by it, but he's not Eddie Murphy. He's not Dice. He's not Dane Cook. He's not Kevin Hart. Like, this wasn't necessarily his goal.
You can't do anything. You can't go outside into the hall because there's people waiting out there. You know, if you can't have privacy, you don't exist anymore.
And a comedian who philosophizes their way into reinventing stand-up for themselves, do you think that that type of person wants to tell jokes that they don't care about anymore and wants to stand there while jokes he doesn't care about receive, like, eruptions of applause?
I had lost contact with what I was doing, and I was suffering an artistic crisis that I didn't know I had a capacity for.
Next reason, let's talk about this act. Like, okay, if Marc Maron, for example, is having a bad day and he's grouchy, I mean, is that every day? But it's a particularly bad day and he doesn't really want to go on stage. But he does anyway, and he can kind of like feel his way around and maybe find it, have an okay set. If Steve Martin's not feeling it, this is an incredibly demanding, difficult performance. It has to be so high energy, there's so many different things going on at one time, and it's such a specific tone that he has to hit. Like, if people can see some sadness behind his eyes, all of it's gonna crumble because it's so built on easy, silly fun.
Did I have this on the whole time?
And he's a sensitive guy. He talks openly about the fear and the anxiety and the panic attacks that he was experiencing at this time because he knew how difficult it was and he knew how fragile it was.
Though panic attacks are gone from my life now, they receded as slowly as the ice around Greenland. I continued to suffer the attacks while I went on with my work, refusing to let this inner nightmare affect my performing or writing career. When I think of the moments of elation I have experienced over some of my successes, I am astounded at the number of times they have been accompanied by elation's hellish opposite.
So, 1981, 4 years after his first special drops, he quits. He's done. He walks away. And he doesn't announce it, he doesn't say anything, he just sort of stops. He quits stand-up and he pivots into film, and that's how most people know him.
I'm the face! He hates these cans! Stay away from the cans!
I was determined to parlay my stand-up success into motion pictures while I still had some clout. A movie career seemed to foster longevity, whereas a career as a comedian who had become a fad seemed finite.
Stand-up's often not an end in itself, and we lose good stand-ups all the fucking time to showbiz. But let's be honest, films are easier to make you way more money, they're way less lonely, much more social, and they're gonna make you famous. They're gonna make you super rich, and they're gonna make you famous, and they're fun. So, I get it. I harbor no ill will. And it's important to remember, people like to tell the story like he was at this huge peak and he just walked away. That's not entirely true, because he was starting to see some empty seats. You know, he was still selling out arenas and things, but maybe in the back at a certain table he'd see empty chairs, and that's something he hadn't seen in years. Instead of waiting to slowly kind of fade and have his career run its course, he just decided to quit before that would happen. And I respect that. He writes novels, he writes scripts and screenplays, he's really into art. He like curates exhibits and collects art. And the one thing that seems to fill his soul more than anything, that certainly fills his soul more than stand-up, but playing the damn banjo. Then he loves it. Like, it's so weird to look at his awards, because he's gotten Grammys for stand-up, and then it's like 40 years, and then Bluegrass Awards. Like, power to you, Steve. You know what you like, and I respect that. He has said multiple times he kind of got into comedy on accident. He loved performing, he wanted to be in show business, and this is one great way to do it. And I gotta say, it takes a hell of a genius to fall into something on accident and leave it changed forever. Steve Martin, I love you.
Good. Now, let's repeat the non-conformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
So my Latin teacher in middle school, and yes, I took Latin in middle school, used to say that Latin wasn't dead, and that Latin had simply changed shape and had become Portuguese and French and Spanish and all of the other Romance languages. And I always sort of liked that. It doesn't really make sense, but I always sort of liked it. And maybe, you know, Steve Martin isn't doing stand-up anymore, but you can see the echoes of his material in so many comedians, and the joy and the whimsy that he brought back to stand-up, I think, cannot be undervalued in the history of stand-up comedy, because comedy had really moved away from a lot of silly and a lot of vaudeville. I won't say it was totally gone, but Steve Martin was a big part of bringing that back. And since then, comedy has kind of gone in these different trends, and it's able to adapt to what the people need and what people want to laugh at. You know, it doesn't need to be caustic all the time. It doesn't need to be silly all the time. There's room for lots of different things in stand-up, and Steve Martin proved that not only in the tone and the content of the comedy that he was doing, but also in the structure and the form and the shapes that it took. Steve Martin really reminded us and reminded comedy that it can be whatever you want it to be. He smashed all of these different rules that comedians thought they had to follow, and comedians can do whatever they want, and I think that's awesome. There are going to be trends, but just like all art, it's open for play, and that's huge. So go listen to Steve Martin, support him, support this channel, like, comment, and subscribe, and all of that. Let me know who you might want to hear me talk about next. I've had some more time, and I've really enjoyed being able to dive back into making these styles of videos. And stay sane. Cannot believe we're coming up on 1 year in quarantine. Stay strong out there.